What do you think you would do if you had a friend who had an eating disorder and you had any particular concerns about
Well,
them?
I think it's really difficult. It's very difficult to know what to do because your friend has obviously confided in you if they have spoken to you, or even if you're just recognising it. And it's difficult to know whether you're betraying their trust if you talk to an adult, or whether you should keep it to yourself and try and deal with it on your own, which, I mean, obviously isn't really the best way of dealing with it, but it's quite scary.
Yeah, to add to Maddie, a lot of the time you're unclear yourself whether you think the person actually has an eating disorder. Especially speaking as a boy who plays rugby, a lot of friends and all try and keep in shape by going to the gym. And it's a fine line between excessive use of the gym and normal use of the gym.
Okay, so if there was a website that outlined some signs and symptoms that you could look out for, and also had some sort of instruction on what sort of action you could follow, how helpful would you find that?
I think it'd be so useful because you don't know whether you talk to a teacher, another friend, their parent, your own parent, because you just don't know who's the right person in the right position to help someone, and I think you really need that sort of step-by-step guide to what to do.
Yeah, you get very worried about speaking to the right person and making sure you don't speak to the wrong person who could just make things worse. So having a step-by-step action plan will make it a lot easier.
Okay, and sometimes having a friend who's got an eating disorder might make you think a little differently about your own eating and weight and shape. Is that something that you can identify with, and again, what would you find helpful in this instance if you could identify with her?
Well, I think it is very difficult because you suddenly start focusing on how much you are eating and whether you missing a meal is serious, or whether it's just a sort of natural, something that happens sometimes. And so I think having those sort of list of symptoms and like advice on the website would be so useful to make sure that you yourself don't start getting worried about things like that.
I mean, especially when you've got a friend who may have an eating disorder, you become a lot more conscious of what you eat and how much you eat. And it could get to the point where you're getting very worried about your own health. So it'd be really useful to have a guideline and know what you should and should not be eating.
Okay, and in PHSC you cover a lot of these conditions. How helpful would it be for you to have some extra workshops that STEM Forward organise in terms of giving you the opportunity to perhaps find out from a different perspective more information about eating disorders, and also perhaps talk about things in a more informal context?
Well, I think PHSC has to cover like a range of topics, and you find you never really spend much time on eating disorders. And I think it's very difficult, especially when you're in a very formal setting, to ask the questions you really want to ask. And so I think if you had sort of like more informal workshops, it'd be really useful.
I mean, I agree completely with Maddie, especially so from a boys' school, because boys' schools, eating disorders are things that are brushed over very quickly and are disregarded by many guys who claim that it's not something that affects men, which really means that if it does come up in class, you don't get a chance to talk about it.